If you have come across any monitor reviews from technical websites or channels in recent years, you may have seen photos of this three-eyed alien steering a UFO. This is a pursuit camera technique developed by Blurbusters.com to accurately depict the amount of motion blur we perceive in real life. And today, I'm going to use this test to demonstrate the difference between 480Hz and 240Hz on a screen that can do both. Namely LG's new UltraGear 32GS95UE 32-inch 4K OLED monitor, which can switch between 4K 240Hz and 1080p 480Hz with one press of a physical hotkey under the monitor. Marketed by the South Korean brand as Dual Mode, you can even choose to display the 480Hz mode at smaller screen sizes. As you can see for yourself, the test UFO photo at 480Hz looked significantly clearer than that at 240Hz. The top and bottom text were more legible, and you can even make out the three eyes on the alien. Besides improving motion clarity, a faster refresh rate together with high frame rates at source also reduces latency and boosts gaming responsiveness. Using an NVIDIA LED device to measure end-to-end system latency, which takes into account the mouse click, CPU processing, operating system, game application, GPU rendering, and finally the display, I obtained an average end-to-end latency of merely 8.6 milliseconds after 100 runs with the LG 32GS95UE operating at 480Hz. The lowest I've recorded from any display I've reviewed to date. At 240Hz, average end-to-end latency was slightly higher at 13 milliseconds, while the corresponding results at 120Hz and 60Hz were slower at 21 milliseconds and 37.5 milliseconds respectively. Together with OLED's pixel-level light control, which allows for true blacks and vibrant colors, the super low input lag and near instantaneous pixel response time meant that you can enjoy top-notch picture quality and responsiveness when playing games at up to 480Hz, without needing to put up with grayish blacks, blooming, smearing, ghosting, or other artifacts that can affect LCD-based monitors. A dose of reality regarding 480Hz though. With the best intentions in the world, even the NVIDIA RTX 4090 card we recently installed in our PC rig struggled to output anywhere close to 480 frames per second at 1080p resolution in most AAA titles. But the 480Hz support on the LG GS95 can at least benefit some esports games such as Rocket League, and will provide some degree of future-proofing for when more powerful graphics cards hit the market. Even though the two HDMI 2.1 ports on the LG 32GS95UE supports the full HDMI 2.1 bandwidth of 48 gigabits per second plus 48 gigabits per second of DSC or display stream compression, we encountered some interference and tearing artifacts over HDMI on our setup. Maybe because 480Hz isn't an officially supported frame rate under the HDMI 2.1 spec, so we just used DisplayPort without any issues instead. Note that the 480Hz mode would drop the resolution to 1080p on the monitor, resulting in fuzzier text and icons, so for work and productivity purposes, it's best to use the 4K 240Hz mode. The second generation MLA or Micro Lens Array Plus OLED panel implemented on the LG 32GS95UE features a rearranged subpixel layout to improve text clarity. It's now RGWB instead of the RWBG configuration found on older WOLED monitor panels. In practice, small icons and fine text were rendered with higher contrast and less color fringing, even at 100% scale, thanks in no small part to the 140 ppi tool. Granted, fine text still won't look as pin-sharp as that on a true RGB OLED monitor. For instance, the LG 32EP950 equipped with a JOLED panel. But we had no qualms using the 32GS95UE as a work and productivity monitor in terms of fine text reproduction. Nevertheless, OLED burn-in from static elements on screen remains a worry, but fortunately LG has clarified that the monitor is protected by a 2-year warranty which covers OLED burn-in, at least in the USA. To mitigate the risk of permanent burn-in, LG Electronics has implemented a number of anti-screen burn measures on the 32GS95UE. They are the usual pixel shifting, which would still display the entire picture without cropping, courtesy of pixel over-provision beyond the 3840x2160 resolution, screensaver functionality, and image cleaning manual composition cycle trigger. However, there seemed to be no setting in the user menu to disable logo luminance auto-dimming, causing the monitor to selectively dim down certain static elements in HDR mode, which couldn't be defeated except by switching to SDR mode. As confirmed by this super macro footage of the subpixels, the LG GS95 monitor is equipped with an MLA Plus OLED panel, which is of course necessary to extract high peak brightness from a 32-inch 4K OLED monitor with high PPI and hence lower pixel aperture ratio. Talking of which, there are 2 peak brightness options available in HDR mode on the LG 32GS95UE. Measuring in the most accurate Gamer 1 picture preset, we found the default peak brightness setting of low to deliver a peak luminance of 430 nits on a 10% window at D65 white point. The measured EOTF of peak brightness low also undertracked the ST2084 PQ standard, causing HDR presentation to appear darker than reference. Most users will likely prefer switching peak brightness to high, which could reach 1300 nits on a 1% window at D65 white point, although this introduced a couple of other issues. 1. Peak brightness high would unfortunately over-brighten the PQ EOTF tracking, increasing the risk of blowing out bright highlight detail. And 2. Setting peak brightness to high had a tendency to elicit polarization at certain tones, a consequence of several undesirable kinks along the HDR10 tone curve. The bottom line is, both peak brightness settings are problematic, and we sincerely hope that LG will fix this issue in a future firmware update so that the 32GS95UE can keep pace with QD OLED monitors, which generally feature accurate PQ EOTF tracking out of the box. Full screen luminance reached 260 nits regardless of the peak brightness setting, which is a massive improvement over the corresponding figure of 130 nits achieved by last year's LG 27GR95QE. In SDR mode, the default out-of-the-box Gamer 1 picture preset yielded the most accurate grayscale, but sadly colors tracked closer to the monitor's native white color gamut, leading to an oversaturated SDR presentation. The 2-axis color management system or CMS provided in the picture menu only worked partially to correct the inner color saturation points without affecting the outermost points along the native white color gamut, and so isn't a viable solution. To obtain the most accurate SDR colors out of the box, you should select the sRGB picture mode, which targets Rec. 709 or sRGB color space. However, the factory calibrated grayscale in sRGB mode tracked slightly worse on our review unit than in SDR Gamer 1 mode, introducing a bit of magenta tint into the picture. Fortunately, the RGB balance controls remained accessible in sRGB mode, allowing us to align grayscale to D65 white point with only some minor adjustments, resulting in impressively accurate colors for consuming SDR content. For HDR, DCI-P3 color gamut coverage measured 99% in UV terms, whereas Rec. 2020 coverage was 75%, in line with WOLED displays we've tested over the years. Native 10-bit gradation was fairly smooth, judging from this gray ramp pattern in the Display HDR app, helped by more refined gradation just above black, plus the new detail enhancer dithering technology introduced on second-generation MLA Plus OLED panels. Chrominance overshoot artifacts in dark scenes were kept to a minimum, both on test patterns and in real-world viewing. Bright uniformity was excellent on our review sample, exhibiting no banding or dirty screen effect on full-field gray slides, and there's little to no pink tinting along the sides due to the monitor's smaller screen size relative to a TV. Dark uniformity was also very good by OLED standards, certainly cleaner than a third-generation QD-OLED monitor we had in for testing, even accounting for the brighter near-black gamma on the LG. Although its 4K resolution and 16:9 aspect ratio makes the 32GS95UE fairly suitable for 4K 120Hz console gaming, LG hasn't bothered to implement any HDIG or source-based tone mapping support on the monitor, so adjusting the PS5 or Xbox Series X HDR calibration screen according to the instructions would lead to max TML and max FFTML values that are far too high, causing bright highlight detail to appear clipped in HDIG compliant games. Our recommendation would be to set max TML and max FFTML to around 1000 nits to display HDR games without blown out highlights while preserving sufficient average picture brightness. VRR including G-Sync worked well to eliminate frame drops and tearing artifacts, even in 480Hz mode, and we didn't see much VRR flicker as long as high refresh rates were pushed through by the game engine and graphics card. The LG 32GS95UE is unique among OLED monitors in being capable of emitting sound from the panel itself, marketed by the South Korean brand as Pixel Sound technology, which is not dissimilar to the acoustic surface audio system implemented on Sony OLED TVs. Audio quality was surprisingly decent, delivering clear mid-range and highs with some sort of directionality, though we found bass slightly lacking, which is entirely understandable given the slim chassis. Most gaming enthusiasts will probably already have their own desktop speakers or headphones, but if you don't have space for external speakers, then LG's Pixel Sound system on the 32GS95UE, which could go fairly loud, should be quite appealing, considering that the vast majority of OLED monitors don't even come with built-in speakers. Moving on to a more contentious subject, the matte anti-glare coating muted reflections well, and held on to blacks better than QD OLED monitors in the presence of ambient light. However, we wonder if a glossy screen would better complement OLED's true blacks and insanely high contrast. Let's sum up. The LG 32GS95UE is the first OLED monitor we've tested to support 480Hz refresh rate, albeit at a lower resolution. And the result is the clearest and cleanest motion we've seen from any sample and hold display yet, as long as the source frame rate was equally high. Furthermore, the combination of revamped RGWB subpixel layout and higher 140 ppi has brought significant improvement to fine text clarity, enhancing the monitor's versatility for work and productivity purposes. Add the clean design and class-leading onboard speakers by monitor standards to the equation, and the LG 32GS95UE earns our recommended award. Of course, no display is perfect, and shortcomings on this monitor include inaccurate PQ-EOTF tracking in either peak brightness mode, undefeatable logo luminance dimming in HDR mode, which may prompt some users to go SDR only, not to mention lack of HDIG support for HDR10 gaming. We hope that LG can address at least some of these issues to make the 32GS95UE more competitive against the slew of 32-inch 4K QD OLED monitors hitting the market around the same time. Now, of course, QD OLED monitors don't use microlens array or MLA technology yet. To find out how MLA works to increase brightness without consuming more power, for example up to 1300 nits on the 32GS95UE, please watch my explanation video by clicking here.